Welcome to Moonlit Romance Library. Please follow for more stories. Chapter 1: Blood on the Snow. The military parade square of Arventhor smelled like iron in winter. Alara Voss stood at the edge of the square, one gauntleted hand wrapped around the reins of her black warhorse, the other pressed flat against her own thigh to stop the trembling. The trembling was not fear. It was the aftermath of killing 7 men in the border ambush 3 hours ago, the last of whom had driven a serrated blade across her left wrist before she'd taken his throat with her sword pommel. The wound had been wrapped in a torn strip of her own cloak. The blood had frozen into the fabric. She could feel it cracking every time she moved her fingers. Behind her, Noctis, her warhorse, her oldest companion, the meanest animal in the royal stables, snorted and stamped one massive hoof into the snow. He did this whenever he was bored, annoyed, or plotting to bite someone. At present, she suspected all three. "Easy," she murmured. Noctis flattened his ears and tossed his head sideways, yanking the reins hard enough to jolt her injured wrist. She hissed through her teeth. He had the temperament of a drunken tavern brawler and the intelligence of a war strategist, and he had never once in his life been easy about anything. She'd found him 6 years ago in a burned-out border stable, a half-starved yearling with hooves too big for his legs and fury in every line of his body. The stable master had warned her not to go near him. "He bites," the man had said. "He kicks. He'll kill you if you try to saddle him." Alara had walked in anyway, because she'd recognized something in those wild black eyes. She had been 15. She'd had no wolf form, no noble bloodline, no mother, and a father who drank himself to sleep every night in a guardsman's barracks. She understood what it meant to be angry and have no one to explain it to. She'd sat in the corner of his stall for 3 hours. She hadn't touched him. She'd simply sat there eating an apple, and when she was done, she'd placed the core on the ground and left. The next morning, the core was gone. The morning after that, she brought 2 apples. By the 4th day, he'd come close enough to breathe on her hair. By the 7th, he'd let her touch his nose. He'd bitten her on the 8th day, hard enough to leave a scar on her shoulder, and she'd bitten him back. Not literally, but she'd flicked his ear so hard he'd startled backward into the wall. They had understood each other perfectly ever since. Now Noctis shoved his massive head against her back, pushing her forward half a step. He wanted to leave. He had wanted to leave since they'd arrived. Horses were not stupid creatures, whatever the nobles said, and Noctis in particular possessed an uncanny ability to sense when a situation was about to become terrible. But she could not leave, not yet. Ahead of her, the parade square was arranged in the rigid formations of a royal acknowledgement ceremony. The Council of Elders occupied the raised stone dais at the center, 7 ancient werewolves in silver-trimmed black robes, their faces carved into permanent expressions of disapproval. Flanking them were the noble houses, arranged by rank. Fur-lined cloaks, jeweled circlets, gloved hands clasped over embroidered sashes. To the left, the soldiers of the Crown Guard stood in polished rows, breath steaming in the cold. To the right, the court ladies and lesser nobles clustered together like a flock of brightly plumed birds. And in the center of it all, standing on the frost-covered stone with his back to her, was Aldrich. Crown Prince Aldrich Veyron, her fated mate. Even now, even with blood frozen to her wrist and 7 kills sitting heavy in her bones, the sight of him made something twist beneath her ribs. Not the mate bond, though that was there too, that low golden hum that had lived inside her chest since she was 17 and first felt it snap into place. This was older than the bond. This was memory. This was the boy who had pulled her out of a frozen river when she was 12, who had taught her the sword forms the weapons master wouldn't teach girls, who had sat beside her on a parapet at dawn and said, "You don't need a wolf, Alara. You already fight like one." She had loved him since before she knew what the word meant. Aldrich turned. Even across the width of the parade square, she could see how the cold had sharpened his features. The strong jaw, the dark brow, the mouth that was too severe for softness but had once smiled at her like she was the only warmth in the kingdom. His black hair was pushed back from his face, and his golden eyes, wolf eyes always, found her immediately. Something flickered there, pain maybe, or guilt. Noctis snorted again, louder this time, and Alara felt the reins go taut as he shifted his weight. He never liked Aldrich. Even in the early days when she and Aldrich had been inseparable, the horse had regarded the crown prince with the particular disdain of an animal who could smell dishonesty long before it arrived. "Stand," she told him quietly. He stomped, twice. She ignored him because Lady Cordelia Ashworth was stepping forward. Cordelia was beautiful. That had never been in dispute. She had auburn hair that fell in perfect waves, a waist like a drawn bowstring, skin that had never been within spitting distance of a battlefield, and a laugh that sounded like crystal chimes designed specifically to make other women feel inadequate. She was the daughter of Lord Ashworth, the wealthiest nobleman in Arventhor, and she had been presented to the council as a suitable Luna candidate 6 months ago. Around the same time, the whispers about Alara's lack of wolf form had grown too loud to ignore. Cordelia placed her hand on Aldrich's arm. It was a small gesture, delicate, possessive, perfectly calculated. Alara saw it. The entire square saw it. That was, of course, the point. Aldrich did not remove the hand. And then he spoke. "Lady Cordelia has stood faithfully beside the crown during the recent border conflicts," he said, his voice carrying across the parade ground with the practiced ease of a man raised to address armies. "Her devotion to the council's guidance and the traditions of our bloodline is beyond reproach." Beside Alara, Noctis made a sound that could only be described as derisive. She agreed with him, but she kept her face still. She had spent 10 years in this court. She knew how to hold her expression. She knew how to stand with blood soaking through her glove and not let a single person see her flinch. Elder Hargrave, the eldest and most venomous member of the council, leaned forward on the dais. "And what of the knight, Your Highness?" Aldrich's jaw tightened. She saw it, the microflexion, the way his eyes darted toward her and then deliberately pulled away. "The knight?" "Sir Alara Voss." Hargrave's voice was thin and precise, like a needle threading through silk. "Your personal guard. The soldiers report she single-handedly broke the ambush at the Thornwinter Pass this morning. 7 enemy wolves, was it? While the rest of your escort was pinned down?" Silence in the square. The soldiers shifted. Some of them had been there. Some of them had watched her walk into that ambush with nothing but a sword and a warhorse while they cowered behind overturned carts. "She performed her duty," Aldrich said. "Her duty." Alara's fingers tightened on the reins. "Indeed." Hargrave smiled, and it was the smile of a man who had already arranged the outcome of this conversation. "And what is her duty, precisely?" "I ask because there has been some confusion among the court about the nature of her position." Cordelia lifted her chin. The torchlight caught the sapphires at her throat. "Surely there is no confusion, Elder. Sir Voss is a guard, a sword, a useful tool." She let the word tool hang in the air like a jewel she was admiring. But one does not elevate a hunting dog to the throne simply because it bites well. Laughter. Small, controlled, noble laughter. The kind that was designed to humiliate without providing anything concrete enough to challenge. Alara felt the bond pulse, Aldrich's emotions bleeding through. Shame, guilt, and underneath that, a desperate, furious fear she didn't understand. She waited for him to speak, to correct Cordelia, to say something. His golden eyes met hers across the square, and in them she saw the thing she'd been afraid to name for months. Apology. "Sir Voss is my guard," Aldrich said. His voice was clear and carried to every corner. "She is not my Luna. A woman without a wolf is unworthy of standing beside the throne." The world went very quiet. Or perhaps it went very loud and Alara simply stopped hearing it. The words hit her somewhere beneath the mate bond, beneath the muscle and bone, in the place where she had kept every promise he'd ever made her, every dawn patrol together, every battlefield prayer, every whispered "I will always choose you." A woman without a wolf. Unworthy. The nobles were watching her, the soldiers were watching her. Cordelia was watching her with barely concealed satisfaction, her hand still resting on Aldrich's arm like a flag planted on conquered territory. The council watched with the hungry patience of men who had been waiting for this moment. They wanted her to cry. She knew this with the clarity of a sword edge. They wanted her to kneel, to beg, to ask Aldrich to explain, to provide some spectacle of feminine desperation they could reference for years afterward when they needed an example of why wolfless women should not presume. Noctis pressed his nose against her shoulder. His breath was warm and his nostrils flared, and his ears were flat against his skull in the expression she recognized as his battle face. He wanted to charge. He had always wanted to solve problems by charging at them. In this, at least, they were not alike. Alara reached up and unclasped the silver badge from her armor. It was a simple thing, a wolf rampant over a crown, the mark of the royal personal guard. She had worn it since she was 18. It had been pinned over her heart when she'd killed her first enemy wolf. It had been stained with mud, blood, rain, and once, memorably, horse spit when Noctis had sneezed directly onto her chest during an inspection. She held it up so the torchlight caught it. Then she threw it into the snow at Aldrich's feet. The sound it made was very small. The silence that followed was enormous. "Servas," Aldrich began. "That's the last order I'll follow," she said. Her voice was steady. She would make it steady if it killed her. "And I wasn't a dog, Your Highness. I was the only one willing to stand between you and every blade aimed at your throat. The dog was whoever taught you to call it nothing." She turned. She mounted Noctis in a single fluid motion that sent a lance of pain through her injured wrist, but she'd mounted this horse in worse condition, with a broken rib once, with an arrow shaft still lodged in her thigh once, during a thunderstorm that had driven every other horse in the stable to panic. This was nothing. This was just her heart. Noctis needed no command. He surged forward, and the crowd parted, not for her, but for him, because he was 16 hands of black fury, and he had a documented history of biting anyone who didn't move fast enough. Behind her, she heard Aldrich call her name. She did not turn. They reached the drawbridge before the shouting started. The royal city of Arventhor was built on a high plateau, accessible only through the Great Gate and its ancient drawbridge over the Frostclaw Gorge. The bridge was wide enough for 4 horses abreast, paved in dark stone, and flanked by carved wolf statues that had watched 1,000 years of comings and goings with the same blank expression. Noctis's hooves rang against the stone. Below, the gorge dropped into mist and darkness. Above, the sky was the color of a bruise, violet and black and swollen with snow that had not yet fallen. Alara stopped at the center of the bridge. The mate bond hummed inside her chest. She could feel Aldrich through it, his panic, his guilt, his fury at himself, his desperate certainty that she would come back. She always came back. She had always come back. After every slight, every public humiliation, every whispered insult from courtiers who called her the wolfless shadow, the broken blade, the guard who warmed the prince's bed because she couldn't warm his throne, she had swallowed it and she had come back. Not tonight. She closed her eyes. She reached inside herself, past the pain in her wrist, past the exhaustion in her bones, past 10 years of loving a man who could announce her worthlessness to the entire kingdom and still expect her to return. She found the bond. It was there, golden and warm, woven into the center of her being like a thread spun from sunlight. It connected her to Aldrich, his heartbeat, his breath, his wolf. She had lived with it for so long that she no longer remembered what silence felt like. She wrapped her will around it, and she pulled. The pain was immediate and absolute. It felt like reaching into her own chest and tearing out a rib. No, worse. It felt like reaching into her soul and ripping out the part that had learned to love. The golden thread screamed as it frayed. Noctis shrieked beneath her, rearing, because he could feel it too. The shockwave of a fated bond being forcibly severed, something so unnatural that even the stones of the bridge seemed to shudder. She didn't stop. She pulled until the thread snapped. The silence that followed was the most terrible sound she had ever heard. She swayed in the saddle. The world tilted. The gorge gaped below her like a mouth, and for one dizzying moment she thought she was going to fall, off the horse, off the bridge, into the dark. Noctis caught her. Not literally, because horses didn't catch people, but he did what he always did when she was about to break. He planted his hooves, lowered his massive body, and shifted his weight so that she fell forward against his neck, instead of sideways into nothing. His mane was coarse and warm against her face. He stood absolutely still, his breath steaming in the cold, and he waited. She pressed her forehead against his neck and did not cry. After a long moment, she straightened. Her chest felt hollowed out, as if someone had scooped out everything soft and left only bone and determination. "Okay," she whispered. Noctis flicked one ear. Forward. He walked, steady, sure, carrying her off the bridge and onto the mountain road beyond the gate, into the snow and the dark and the vast, empty world that no longer had a golden thread connecting it to a man who had called her unworthy. Behind her, inside the city, she thought she heard a wolf howl. Aldrich's wolf, recognizing the severance, screaming into the night. She did not look back. Chapter 2. The Night Between. The stable widow's name was Marin. She had been waiting at the last way station before the mountain road, a stone shelter built into the cliff face, half hidden by snow, used by border patrols and occasionally by women leaving the royal city in circumstances that did not permit the main gate. Marin was 47, sturdy as an oak barrel, with iron-gray hair braided tight against her skull and hands that had seen more horse ailments than any noble healer had seen human ones. She had run the lower stables of Arventhor for 20 years, and in all that time she had been invisible. Nobles did not notice the woman who fed their horses. They noticed only when the horse was lame, and then they blamed her. Alara had noticed her. At 14, new to the guard barracks and friendless, Alara had spent more time in the lower stables than in the training yard because the horses didn't care that she had no wolf. Marin had found her there one night, a skinny blonde girl asleep in a hay pile with a wild yearling standing guard over her, and had simply draped a blanket over her and said nothing. In the years since, their friendship had been conducted almost entirely through the horse. Marin treated Noctis's hooves, trimmed his mane, checked his teeth, adjusted his saddle, mixed his feed, and reported his moods to Alara with the clinical precision of a field medic. She was the only person besides Alara that Noctis tolerated, and even that tolerance had limits. He'd bitten through 2 of her leather aprons, and once deliberately stood on her foot during a shoeing. Now Marin stood at the way station door with a lantern in one hand and a feed bag in the other, and she looked at Alara with the expression of a woman who had already heard the news and had been packed for 3 hours. "I changed his shoes this afternoon," Marin said, handing Alara the feed bag. "New iron, good grip for mountain snow. There's a poultice in the left saddlebag for that wrist. Don't argue, I can see the blood from here. And I packed dried meat, grain, 2 water skins, and the herb mix he likes. The one with the fennel." Alara stared at her. "How did you—" "I know that horse." Marin jerked her chin toward Noctis, who was already nosing the feed bag with the aggressive enthusiasm of an animal who believed every meal might be his last. "He's been agitated for 3 days, stamping, refusing the stable, snapping at the grooms. He knew before you did." Noctis lifted his head from the feed bag long enough to snort in what sounded like confirmation. Alara dismounted. The pain in her chest, the hollow, torn-open cavity where the bond had been, flared so intensely that she grabbed the saddle to stay upright. Marin reached for her arm, steadied her, said nothing about the way Alara's face had gone white. "I don't know where you're going tonight," Marin said. Her voice was quiet, practical, the voice of a woman who had lived her entire life in a world that undervalued practical women and had stopped expecting it to change. "But he knows." She nodded toward Noctis. "He's been impatient to take you away." Alara's throat closed. She wanted to say something. "Thank you," or "goodbye," or "I'm sorry I never spoke up when the stable master shorted your wages," or "you deserved better than this invisible life." But Marin was already adjusting Noctis's girth strap, checking the saddlebag buckles, running her hands along his legs the way she'd done 1,000 times. "The border road is passable as far as the Grey Mark," Marin said. "After that, you'll be in disputed territory. The enemy factions patrol the passes after dark, but they don't usually bother lone riders. Too much trouble for too little gain. She paused. Unless the rider is someone important. I'm not important. Marin looked at her with eyes that held 20 years of watching a wolfless girl become the strongest knight in the kingdom. You're important to him, she said, and touched Noctis's nose. That's enough for me. Noctis bumped Marin's hand with his massive head, and then, in a display of affection so rare that Alara almost lost her composure, he lowered his nose and breathed gently on the older woman's hair. Go, Marin said. And when you get where you're going, check his left foreleg. He's been favoring it, but he won't show you until it suits him. Stubborn creature. Alara mounted. The pain pulsed. Noctis moved beneath her, steady as stone. She rode into the snowfield. She made it 4 miles before the first backlash hit. The broken bond didn't heal cleanly. She had known it wouldn't. The old text said that severing a fated bond was like amputating a limb, except the limb was made of emotion, and the phantom pain lasted forever. What the old texts hadn't mentioned was the sound. A wolf howling inside her skull, not her wolf, because she didn't have one, but the echo of Aldrich's wolf, trapped in the remnant of the bond like a voice caught in an